Hi, this is Mrs. Bustamante. We're still talking about energy conservation, and one way we can talk about energy conservation and energy use is when we talk about our hot water tanks. So most hot water tanks, the water is heated 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Because the heat is lost through the flue and the walls of the storage tank. This is called standby heat loss. Is consumed even when no hot water is actually being used. So the whole tank of water is basically warmed all the time at whatever temperature you set it at. Bigger tanks require more hot water, so it typically takes more energy to keep them warm or at least get them warm, right? And most of the time water heaters are used natural gas, right? So we have to light what we call the pilot light. It's often stays lit in order to keep it warm all the time. So examples, sometimes you might have a vacation home, um, and like you're nobody's there using hot water, but you might have a small natural gas bill because you're still heating the water in your water tank. So what happens, like you're taking a shower and all of a sudden gets cold? That means like you have used the entire hot water tank. So larger families, right, can buy larger tanks. They come in different sizes. Um, and you can also change the temperature of the hot water tank, right? So if you set the hot water tank at a lower temperature, this will save energy. Also means you don't have as much hot water. So there are things called tankless water heaters. And then the energy consumption of these units is generally lower since standby loss from the storage tank is limited. Uh, Basically, we can think of them as demand water heaters. They have enough capacity to meet household needs, and they're typically still gas or propane fired. It depends, right? You don't have to understand the picture of how this all works, right? Um, but you need to know that they sometimes also just run off electricity, right? And knowing where your electricity source comes from plays a role in maybe thinking about some of the greenhouse gases that are or aren't produced in a given situation. Sometimes they often tend to cost more. Um, so sometimes there's subsidies available for these things, for tankless water heaters. And it really can just depend on where you are. So natural gas or coal for electricity or solar or wind or geothermal, right? So all those things like your water heater we just talked about, well, if you have solar heating and your solar panels are what you use to heat your water, maybe it's not so much of a big deal. Which type of water tank you have, right? But most of us don't have that all the time. So we talked a lot about how electricity or energy is produced, right? That electricity that gets produced has to be transferred to your home or wherever your business even, right? So when we do that, every time we move energy from one place to another, we lose some of the available energy just because we're transferring it, we're moving it from one source to our end user. These are through wires, right? And then we can think about this relating to efficiency and the laws of thermodynamics, right, which we should know for the test, that every time we move from one source to another, we lose some heat, or excuse me, we lose some energy as heat. But imagine if your energy came from solar or wind, this would decrease your greenhouse gas emissions. Um, and probably maybe even be a little bit more efficient if you're just going a shorter distance. So this last slide is really important. Suggestions about how to make a transition to a more sustainable energy future. You should know these. You should be able to talk about these. We talked about most of them in the video here. Just in different ways about subsidies, and encouraging people to become more renewable in what they use, and how we can be better. So it's a good time to pause this slide, look at this slide, make sure you understand them all, and could talk about them for a few minutes.